Whether I'm asked to do a psychological assessment of a child of 8 years old, perhaps by social care or the courts, or whether I'm coaching a CEO of some organisation or other, one of the first things that I'm usually trying to establish and understand is from what attachment lens is this human being viewing their world through. Attachment, it's a funny word. It's one that's often misunderstood and confused. And today, hopefully, is an opportunity to provide a little bit more meaning behind the word and reduce some of the confusion and misunderstanding with which is often misunderstood with modern parenting trends. Slings, baby wearing, velcroing children to our chest. Bottle's bad, breast is best. Yep. I mean, okay, I get that, partly. Co-sleeping with our infants until it's them that decides that they no longer want to stay with us. Yet it's often our partners or significant others that have already been kicked out in order to support this bonding process. Is this what attachment is? Is this what it is really? See, attachment is about security. Attachment is about safety. Attachment is about consistency. Even love is not enough on its own. Love is a really important part of this pie, but there is a whole load more ingredients and filling that needs to be considered before this particular pie gets baked. If we can provide good enough caregiving, not perfect, good enough caregiving, secure enough, safe enough, consistent enough caregiving for our little people, then they stand a reasonable enough chance of growing with an internal attachment security, which is a gift. With this attachment security, they grow with an advantage which sadly only around 51% of us currently enjoy. With the advantage of attachment security, they then might move out into the world with a little bit more confidence than their neighbour, a little bit more social and emotional intelligence than their friend over the road, and perhaps with a little more fulfillment and less anxiety in the interpersonal and intimate relationships which we all strive to seek out in one way or another. Attachment comes in different styles. We have secure, we have avoidant, we have insecure, ambivalent or resistant, often known as an anxious state, and we have disorganized, which is a little bit more complicated. But you probably didn't know that. You're in the dark. We can predict how we'll approach relationships, what is going to bring us joy and fulfillment, and what is going to bring us anxiety and make us want to run for the hills. Our confidence, our self-esteem, our sense of self, our understanding and perception of what other people think of us, all heavily influenced by our early attachment experiences, yet you probably didn't know that either. We're all in the dark. But how come? Attachment theory is not theoretically controversial. The clever people did the research decades and decades ago. There are literally hundreds of books, articles, research papers, 2.5 clicks on Google, and you can find all the information you need if you know where to look and understand what you're reading. So, how come? We have a voice for ADHD, ASD, ODD, OCD, BPD, and so on and so on and so on. But our jaws soon clamp shut when we are faced at looking inwards, we are faced at looking at our histories and what we experienced and the imprint that was handed to us and the imprint that we have likely handed on or will likely hand on one day or another. If 51% of us are securely attached, then simple math says that 49% of us must be insecurely attached in one form or another. Now, I'm no mathematician, and I certainly didn't like maths when I was at school, but even I can work out that that's basically half of us. Half of us. I remember when my first child was due to be born, we received a letter. It was an invitation to go to the local hospital here in Middlesbrough and have a look at the wards, the corridors, the rooms. You know, we can gain some kind of internal perspective and understanding of what's going to happen when that big day finally arrives. I remember looking around the room. There was probably around 30 to 40 people, all from different walks of life, some young, some old, a few teenagers. It was a real collection of people coming together. I remember having the tour, having the talk. I remember 2 enthusiastic nurses in particular who were really egging us guys on to make sure that our significant others were feeling relaxed, and, you know, the massages and the lavender oil and the benefits of the TENS machine, even though I didn't see anybody wanting to put their hand up to hire that. But what did we learn about the relationship, particularly post-birth when parents and children go home? We learned that breast is best, and skin-to-skin contact promotes bonding. But what was said about attachment? Nothing. Not a word. Silence. It was an opportunity missed. The title of this talk is The Impact of Silence. And it's this silence that prolongs the confusion and the pain, and it's this silence that keeps us in the dark. But why? The theory is not controversial, but maybe there is a reason. You see, when we look in the mirror, most of us, or some of us, at times, do not like what we see looking back. We're not just looking at us, we're looking at generations of us. We're looking at our earliest experience and how those shaped us. We're looking at our parents, their experiences, and their attachment styles. We're looking at intergenerational patterns of behaviour and ways of being that shape the internal models of the world that we all operate from today. Like it or not, we're looking and staring into the face of trauma, handed down generationally, unconsciously, unwittingly, and unapologetically. To understand that how we treat our little people, particularly before the age of 4 to 5, will have potentially a lifelong impact upon their confidence, their self-esteem, sense of self, relational success, perhaps overall success, is very inconvenient. Very inconvenient. But little kids, they're resilient, aren't they? They don't remember anything that far back anyway, though, don't they? See, little kids are resilient at a price. They have to adapt to find ways to cope. If I'm distressed and nobody comes, there's no point in crying. But there's also no point in learning to trust you or anyone else either. If I do cry, but I'm scolded for it, I'll soon learn to shut up. But I'll turn my sadness to anger, and so you better all watch out. I will soon learn the rules for internalizing and externalizing my needs, but it will be so far back I won't consciously remember doing so. Today we're here to celebrate Teesside. TEDx Teesside Women, many of whom have had to overcome tremendous obstacles to get where they've got today and now massively support other people to achieve their goals too. This is my invitation to you to be a part of breaking this silence that permeates our society, particularly in terms of how our earliest experiences impact our future success. We need to speak up and get real. Our grandparents and parents didn't get everything right, and neither will we. But if the silence remains, nothing will change. I'm a father to 3 girls. I need you to be their voice. I need you to be the voices of their generation. As girls, they're more likely to experience childhood trauma or adverse childhood traumatic experiences than boys. They're more likely to develop depression, anxiety, shame, guilt, self-blame, all internalizing experiences where it's obviously not a defining line. Girls tend to internalize emotional distress, whereas boys will often externalize things and act out in various ways. So girls often get missed and slip through the net. These toxic internal belief systems can be crippling to our young girls. They are more likely to develop depression. They're more likely to exhibit self-harming behaviors, eating disorders, and dissociative disorders. Schools often invite me in to do training, often to do with trauma and becoming attachment and trauma aware. So they're moving in that direction. They're understanding that children have complex needs and that early relational stress can impact emotional and physical dysregulation. But with empathy and compassion, schools can start building in programs to support these children rather than exclude and shame them further. They understand that the children have just adapted behaviorally to cope for ways of dealing with intolerable stress, stress that they should never have had to have dealt with, but have done and survived. The thing about school children, about little people, is that if you leave them long enough, they become big people. They're sat next to you now. They are across from you at work. They are behind the manager's desk. You are married to them and them to you. They are your friends, your colleagues, your clients, your siblings. This is us. We need to start understanding what we're really seeing. I have people close to me who zone out completely when they're under stress. At work, or maybe when they're a child at school, this will be seen as being inattentive, aloof, daydreamy, lazy, when it's just a coping strategy and style learned many, many years ago. I have friends and colleagues who are unable to sit still, unable to not interrupt, unable to stay level-headed, and unable to keep eye contact. But this also would be misinterpreted to be hostile, aggressive, rude, just defensive coping strategies. I know some people with so much to offer, so much potential, who want to vomit at the idea of standing up and being counted. Being visible, such a shame trigger that they're willing to hinder their entire future on age-old defensive strategies, perhaps 4 or 5 in the here and 45 years old in the here and now, but still acting from an emotional place of 4 or 5, because perhaps it was then that being silent and being good was the only option they felt available to them. There are people in this room who I would assume there are people in this room who, given the opportunity to stand up and be heard and put your hand up, choose to keep the hand down. How might your early experiences have impacted upon this? I want my girls to put their hands up. I want them to stand up and be counted when the time comes. I want them to feel internally secure enough and psychologically safe enough to internalize boundaries strong enough to say no when needed, but also yes when opportunities arrive. I think we can start developing psychologically safe organizations, not just in schools. That if we can start understanding that we're all imperfectly perfect, complex and unique, we may just start to discover that we all have gifts that we can offer. Also, that our early childhood memories may start to matter much less. We also may just hang on to those that we ought not to be letting go of. The impact of silence is profound, but the impact of empathy is safety. And the impact of being heard will lead to change. But we all have a choice. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.